Woman, an in-depth exploration of the world of women today with Sandra Elkin.
Welcome to Woman. We are at the Chautauqua Institute in Chautauqua, New York. The Institute, which for 100 years has provided educational, religious, recreational, and cultural opportunities for persons of all ages. My guest this evening came here to work on her latest book and to lecture as a guest of the Chautauqua Literary and Scientific Circle. With me is Elizabeth Janeway, author of many novels including Walsh Girls, Daisy Kenyon, Leaving Home, and The Third Choice, as well as two very well-known works of nonfiction, Man's World, Woman's Place, and her most recent work, Between Myth and Morning, Women Awakening. Welcome once again, Elizabeth.
Nice to be here.
Elizabeth, what is power?
Oh my goodness. Well, if you look it up in the dictionary, you find so many definitions. They tend to divide between dominance and capability. Men are a bit hung up on dominance. I found that out experientially because I get asked, usually by men, well, exclusively by men, this question. My husband and I are both active, we both have active careers, and it interests men very much as to which of us is dominant. No woman has ever asked me that question. Women don't have any particular problem in imagining that people can share, or that it doesn't bother me that Elliot knows a good deal more about economics than I do, but that he is willing to ask me whether I think a piece of writing he has done needs any touches on it. We each have our own area in which we both agree that one of us is a little more expert than the other. No problem.
Do you think men have all the power?
Do I think men have all the power? No, I don't think they have all the power. Certainly all men don't have power. If we're talking about dominance kind of power, then it's true that men are dominant. The dominant people are male, but not all men are dominant by any stretch of the imagination. Many men are subordinate. Many men live lives which are controlled by other people. If we're talking about power as capability, I don't think that the weak use or recognize their own capabilities enough, whatever their sex. Whether they are women or whether they are subordinate men, I think all of us could do more, could use our capacities much more fully than we do. I think we have accepted a myth of the powerful are very powerful. I don't think they're that powerful. I think there are powers that reside in us the people. I almost said in we the people. I don't know which is better grammar or worse grammar.
Well, women are constantly told, though, that they're powerless.
Sure,
What
and
should we be telling them instead?
Why, I guess they should be told what all people should be told, that one can make one's fate more than most people think. Not entirely, of course. But the real problem, I think, is that not enough people value themselves highly enough to think that the effort is worthwhile. The effort isn't all that great once you get started. But a lot of women, to come to that, who haven't yet decided to say, I want to live the best life that I can, which doesn't mean that you want to live a perfect life or that you want to be enormously fulfilled or anything like that, but simply that you want to make do the best you can, make the choices which will give you the most satisfaction. A lot of these women don't try because they underestimate their own capacities. They are not confident. They do not value themselves highly enough. And one of the things that the women's movement does, I believe, is help women to say, I think maybe I'm a better person than I was brought up to believe. I think maybe I can do more things than people led me to expect.
Because it's sort of you can't fight City Hall attitude, too, I think.
Well, you can fight City Hall, damn it. Now, look, here in the last decade, there were two overwhelming elections, Johnson in '64, Nixon in '72. And what happened to those two presidents? What happened to them? They went out of office by their own choice, not by a political opponent, another man, defeating them in a regular political election. They went out because they lost the faith and the confidence of just us, the people, of just the rest of us, who went and demonstrated and said, we don't believe you, we don't trust you. This country, all together, all of us, the weak, defeated those two powerful men. I think we should take great pride in that.
Do you think if you, Elizabeth Janeway, had a great deal of power, what would you actually have?
The opportunity to act, of course. How would I act? I don't know. I've never had that kind of power. And being a writer and finding great satisfaction in that sort of work, I'm not eager to take on any kind of executive activity. I doubt that I'd be very good at it. There are people who are better at it than others. I've had an executive position. I was president of the Authors Guild at a time when there was a certain amount of work that needed to be done, and I enjoyed it, I must say, coping with the problems and dealing with long-term activities and with everyday things that had to be taken care of. But it's not my own precious loved work of writing. I wouldn't want to change.
One of the things we hear when power is being talked about is that, oh, well, women will use it just exactly the way men will use it, and, you know, it will be just as corrupting.
I don't think that's necessarily so. For one thing, power is not used the same way in every society. We just think that it is used by a few powerful people, but there are other societies, we call them primitive perhaps, tribal, that kind of thing. But there are many societies, and there have been times in our own history when power was a consensus, when the elders of the tribe, if you want to put it that way, got together and talked things out. There was never a sharp vote. What happened was, what still happens in some societies in Africa, for instance, is that things are talked out until a general opinion emerges. And then that decision is implemented by all the people who have been there, passing it on with a sense that they have participated in making that decision. They have not submitted to it. It hasn't been handed down to them from on high. That's another way of using power and of arriving at a decision, which doesn't happen to be one we're using now, but other people find it a perfectly proper and useful way to act, and I think we could do it.
I think we might be able to, too. Power for women has very often taken a personal route, hasn't it?
You mean that they have achieved power sort of accidentally? Or
right, through marriage, through birth or whatever. What has that meant, do you think, to those particular women?
Well, I suppose it's meant that if they are going to use the power they have, they are going to use it in man's world, in a world that has been, where the rules have been made by men, and where they have to explain themselves to men on the basis of masculine experience. They have to be understood by the people they work with. I don't think there's anything wrong or bad about explaining things to people you're working with, or to understanding the way men's minds work and addressing ourselves to them and trying to make clear what it is that we're after and what we think ought to be done. I think with women doing it together, we may get further faster than just one woman trying to do it alone. Women who have been successes on their own will absorb and internalize men's rules, perhaps even more than successful men do, some of them at any rate, because it's been an awful tough job. If you decide you want to be a queen bee success, you're buying the whole masculine mystique. You're buying the whole idea that there's just one right way to do it, and men know it, and you'll do it that way. And there isn't just one right way to do anything. There are a lot of ways to do things.
A lot of women seem to shy away from power. Women that you and I both know in the current history of this country shy away from it. And you seem to feel quite strongly in the book that a refusal of power can be just as corrupt.
It's an abdication, certainly it is. Edgar Friedenberg said, I used the quote in Man's World, weakness corrupts, impotence corrupts absolutely. And I think that's true. If you refuse to take any action, you're making over your responsibility to somebody else. You're choosing passivity. That doesn't make you guiltless. Oh, no. You're contributing to the corruption of the powerful by power.
We really can't talk about power without talking about the real objections to the women's movement, can we?
The real objections? You mean the ones that are voiced or the ones that aren't voiced?
Well, I think maybe the ones that aren't voiced.
The fear of women?
Yes, I think so.
Among men. Not all men fear women. The ones who fear them least are the ones who have worked with women on a level equally and know that women are human beings. The men who fear women most are the ones who think that women are inferior. Because for heaven's sakes, if you're going to be bested by somebody who's inferior, what does that say about you?
That you're not any better.
Yes.
Why can't women seem to talk? There hasn't been that much talk about the objective.
Well, I
and
guess...
women among themselves seem to fear this, too.
I think it takes a while for us to get enough self-confidence, enough thinking about ourselves objectively. This is the stage that we're getting to, but not an awful lot of us have got that far yet, to be willing to think of ourselves as part of a general intermixed human structure of society. I don't wonder at that. Women have to go into themselves, have to go very deep into themselves and into their feelings and get acquainted with themselves, with what they really and truly know and believe and feel about themselves before they can come out. We can't make a new image by flipping over the old image and doing it the opposite way. That's a fake. We have to go very deep into our experience and into our feelings and our true emotions and ask ourselves, who am I down there? What is this self? Who is it? What is it that I want? What do I know? What do I believe deeply enough to lay my life down for it? Then we will come out and be able, have the courage to explain ourselves, to work for the goals.
It really is upsetting the whole value system, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. There has been only one value system, not only masculine, but white masculine, not only white masculine, but white middle-class masculine in this society. Those are the norms. That's what everybody goes by.
Where are we turning for power? Are we turning to religion? Are we turning to drugs? Sex, maybe?
Not for power, really, for satisfaction, perhaps. No, I think we're still running away from power.
You think we will
Still,
continue
I
to
think
do
we're
that?
still frightened of it. I hope not. I don't really think so. Because I think where it will come from, how we'll get back to using it sensibly, is going on at the grassroots in small communities, in groups, in people getting together for a specific aim. You get a bunch of women of an ethnic group living in a suburb in Pittsburgh, say, and they decide that there ought to be a stoplight where the children cross the street to go to school. And they tell their husbands to, you know, do something about this with the political boss, and the husbands say, oh, I'll never get anywhere with that. You can't fight City Hall. Well, some of those groups have fought City Hall, and there are stoplights where children cross the street. There are mothers who've taken their baby carriages out and sat in the park and said the bulldozers aren't coming in here, and the bulldozers didn't. This is how we'll begin to use power.
You talk a lot in the book about sex and sexual revolution and a lot of the things that we've been thinking and talking about, but you talk about pornography, and I was very interested in what you had to say about that. You used Last Tango in Paris, and you talked about deliverance.
Well, pornography is it's all male. It's the idea of the innocent rape, sort of, the guiltless rape. It's part of the mystique that says they really like it that way, even if they say no, they want it. And it's kind of a return to a very early stage of infancy in which any baby thinks he or she can have anything. It's pre-language. Before an infant can say, I want this, the infant gets what it wants, food or a dry diaper or love and kisses, because women still, mostly, who are the people who bring up children, know that babies need these things. And they do. It's nice when fathers supply them as well, and it's good for babies to have more than one person to relate to and to know very early on. But it does, at the beginning, make a baby believe that the world will supply what it needs, you know, whether it's wanted or not. Then by the time a child gets to be, say, 2, they begin to be told no. And they discover that you can't really have everything, sad to relate. There are things you want that you aren't going to get. But the idea of being able to have everything, that wonderful sort of golden age, that's what Bruno Bettelheim says. The golden age of mythology is really early infancy, when you were fed and comforted and taken care of without having to ask for anything, you see. That remains in the backs of our heads as kind of a wonderful mythological stage of happiness. Now, if you really lust after somebody and you can't have her, there's something still there left over from that stage inside your head that says, I really can, I really can, I really can, I want it and I can have it. And it's that infantile urge that pornography plays to and satisfies, the idea that, yes, you really can. Of course, in real life, you really don't.
Can you talk in some detail about Last Tango in Paris?
Well, I was saying that this was sort of a working out of this kind of they really want it even if they don't seem to. The girl is presented as an object entirely, both to Brando and to the young man who's making a film of her life. The young man is just as guilty as Brando is. He's photographing her as his image of her, which isn't at all her image of herself. To Brando, she is the anonymous sexual object. We will keep this at an anonymous mythological level, is what the film is saying, and that's where sex really belongs, where we don't know each other's name, where we aren't persons to each other, where I'm man, you're woman, you know, instead of I'm Joe and I've been working hard today and my back aches and I wish you'd rub it a little while before we go to bed, and I'm Mary and I've been working pretty hard today too, and I will this time, but for heaven's sakes don't forget to fix that step on the front porch on Saturday. These things, these human things, are what make us individuals, and when pornography or softcore or hardcore falsifies that and says, really, we're only man, woman, it's myth. Maybe we need myth. I don't think we need dehumanizing each other.
And deliverance, which is the ultimate.
Well, the idea that the ultimate terrible thing that can happen to a man is rape. You know, this is really very funny.
I don't know about you, but I'm not very sympathetic about it.
Yes, I think I think that dehumanized sexual use of another human being is terrible, but I don't think it's any worse for a man than it is for a woman.
To change the subject, why do you think that the women's movement has been accused of not having a sense of humor?
Well, because whose humor, you know, first, and then I suppose you can say what's funny. Things that men think are funny, we take seriously. That little piece I did is a perfect example of it. I wrote an article for Esquire for what was supposedly going to be an article on a whole issue on women, edited by a couple of women, and the article was commissioned by a woman who liked it and said, that's fine. And 2 weeks later, I got it back in the mail, because upstairs, where the men were, they didn't see anything funny about it at all. So when I saw the editor next, I said, Nora, now we know why the women's movement has no sense of humor.
You also, in that article, you talked about a London radio show that was excerpted in the London Sunday Times. Do you remember that story?
Oh, yes. An example of male chauvinist piggery. How are you this morning, said the compere of the show, the master of ceremonies, Mrs. So-and-so. It's nice to talk to you. Tell me something about yourself. What does your husband do?
I think that's terrific. Are you offended when you see American stand-up comics tell, you know, my wife type jokes?
Yeah, I am.
Well, what can we do about that? There seems no way. I mean,
Write letters.
Write letters.
Sure.
I'm not sure.
We don't write enough letters.
You think that really would
That's
make
right,
a difference?
and I'm as guilty as anybody. I haven't written a letter to Betty Ford yet saying, I wish you'd remember what people said about Eleanor Roosevelt, and ask yourself whether, all in all, she was an asset to her husband. Of course she was. And what Betty Ford said will be a plus.
What about language? There's a little bit of controversy going on, and very often men are very offended by the use of words like chairperson and so on, and will get very uptight.
They really do.
And feel that we're using it as a tool.
Well, they think the first thing they do is laugh and say that's silly. It isn't silly. It's everything that is a little bit different from the way things are normally done is seen as silly first. It's a way of reducing its importance. If you say, oh, that's silly, you don't need to do that, you're saying, basically, that's not important. It doesn't matter whether we regard each other as people. We will still get the gender into the way we speak about each other. I think that is important. And first, people try to laugh it off, men try to laugh it off,
Yes.
and then they get angry, saying, oh, but we really don't mean that. Well, if you really don't mean it, for heaven's sakes, what's the objection to saying chairperson?
Linguists object to it also, it seems. They're getting some objection from that corner, and I don't really understand that at all. I think we should just persist.
Oh, certainly we should persist. Certainly some things may end up by turning out to have been silly, but we won't know until we try. The language is changing all the time anyway, for goodness sakes. Let's shove.
What do you think it's important for women to know about the image, their image? And what makes you angry about that?
Oh, I guess the idea that it's very, well, I think what makes me angriest is where the emphasis falls. It falls on being pleasing. It falls on drawing back and letting other people act for you. It falls on saying, don't come on too hard, you'll put people off. All of these things make me irritated. If there are good things about being pleasing, they're human things. As I was saying before, I think we ought to try to please each other. But I don't think that women as a sex should be expected to be pleasing to total strangers who happen to be men. I hope that I am pleasing and polite and courteous and affectionate to men whom I know and like, and I hope I'm the same to women whom I know and like. But why should I be this to total strangers?
Adults do this to children, don't they?
Yes, I think
They
they do.
assign general characteristics to children. And I
And
think,
certainly we do it racially. So we're beginning to get over this because an awful lot of black people have said, don't do that, don't call me that. Nobody says any longer that to call, for a black man to object to being called boy is silly.
right. Elizabeth, what do you mean by liberation? We have about, I think we have a minute.
Well, I guess I mean just really exactly that the strictures and the bonds and the chains that have kept people from doing all the things that they can ought to be off for men as well as for women. The male stereotype restricts men, harms men, keeps them from being all the people that they could be, tells them that it's wrong for them to show emotion, wrong for them to be tender in relations with other people. That's very sad.
Elizabeth, we're out of time. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for watching, and good night.
Woman was produced by WNED-TV, which is solely responsible for its content, and was funded by public television stations, the Ford Foundation, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.